With that, I'm delighted to introduce our speaker today, Justin Fuchs with Thrive Corporate Events. Justin's been around our program and been an attendee at these coffees, and so we're wishing him the best of success as he builds his business. And I can't wait to hear his story and some of the background about Broadway and so forth that we've been pushing in our newsletter. So, Justin, thank you for being here, and thank you for supplying us with treats this morning.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Like you said, my name is Justin Fuchs with Thrive Corporate Events. A little bit about me personally. So I grew up in Omaha. I moved here, went to school here in Lincoln, have a degree in technical theater, emphasis in lighting design. And then I actually ended up moving back to Omaha for work. I worked for a company called TMS. It was kind of interesting. A lot of my friends in senior year of college, they're going to New York and Chicago and LA because it's theater, it's film, you gotta go there, right? And I was like, nope, I'm going to Omaha and I'm gonna work for one of the top 10 lighting companies in the country. And everyone thought I was crazy. And I never applied for anything. I just walked in and started working. And the rest is history. And I've seen a lot of them back here in Lincoln, back in Omaha. And I hate to say it, but I was like, how did New York work for you? But they're all still doing good. So it's kind of interesting. It just kind of shows that you don't always have to follow that path of go to the big city and go do this. There's lots of stuff around. Hidden gems. So while at TMS, I started as a lighting tech with them, working on fairs, festivals, in the rain, in the mud, and all of that gross stuff. You know, when you go as an audience member to a festival and then it rains and you leave, yeah, there's still people there that have to deal with all of that, and that's what I did. I also then moved into that after some fairs and festivals and growing, moved into touring. Touring with groups like Mannheim Steamroller, Dave Matthews Band, Incubus, a whole bunch of things. So touring is a whole nother world, a much glamorous world of nice buses and inside and things like that. I also then, as a tech for that, kind of moved into designing some of those shows like Mythbusters and doing their lighting design for their stage show. So an evolution going from a tech to the designer. And then I also started working with Alton Brown on his show as a tech. And yes, he's amazing. If you don't know him, he's a chef on Food Network. He does all the science, good eats stuff. Started working with him. He'll come up a little bit later, but I've gone through a whole gamut with Alton on his show. So 6 years on the road. I've been to every major city and every state except for Alaska and Hawaii. So whoever wants to pay for me to go there, you let me know. I will take the trip. One thing while on the road that's interesting as a tech is every day you're in a different city. So I show up at the Lead Center, and I then have 6 to 8 people that help me put the show together. And so when you think about 6 people in Nebraska, and then 6 people in Texas, 6 people in New York, 6 people in California, amazingly different personalities all across the board. And so something that really with that has helped me learn of how to work with people, how to get them to sort of do the things you want them to do. And really my true aspect to that is always just being nice with them and trying to show that if you come in with a good attitude and you're not angry, you can get people to do a lot for you. And so there was one tech that I knew, he always had a saying, and he would start his morning with his 4 people, and he goes, all right, guys, you can either do this my way, or you can do it my way angry. You pick what you want. And I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. Why would you want to start your morning with like, well, you can either have me really pissed off or happy, so you decide. I just feel like if you're just happy, you'll get people to do a lot more than you would if they were angry at you. And I, as a stagehand who goes and still does it, like this Sunday I'm loading out Hamilton in Omaha, like if the person that I'm working with on the show starts off with me and rubs me the wrong way, that bolt's gonna take a lot longer to come out than it will if I'm happy. So it's crazy how that works, and just teaching people how you can get more out of them. So part of that being on the road, some of my biggest success was with Alton Brown. I started with his tour as a lighting tech. There was another lighting designer. I then became his lighting designer on his second tour. And I really worked with him very closely and his set designer, Todd, who has been his set designer for Good Eats, his TV show, since the day it started. He's been with them. And they're TV people. So in their eyes, they work in a whole different medium than a theater touring event world. Their sets, they build once. They have days to do it. They build it in a room. And then when they're done with it, they tear it apart and they put it in the dump. But when you're doing theater and you're traveling, you're loading it in at 8 a.m., the show's at 7 p.m., you're loading it out at 10 p.m., it's in the truck, and the next day you're back at it at 8 a.m. So you got to think in a different way of how sets are built and how things are packed and designed and all of these. So that was a big eye-opening for TV people to understand that theater world. And is it going to fit up a ramp to go in a truck? No, didn't think about that. They built a massive oven that was beautiful, wouldn't go up a ramp. Well, guess what? It didn't work, so they had to redo it all. So it's a lot of those little things that was fun to work with them on these projects and in that regards with Alton. Moving into that, then I moved into being his production manager. As a production manager on the road, you're in charge of making sure the show gets in the room, happens every night, and comes out every night. And as far as all the budget on the technical side of things. I worked with a tour manager. The tour manager's job is he does all the hotels and the schmoozing with the high-ups and all the money aspect. I just spent money and tried to save money was really my goal at the same time. So that was a huge thing with that. What happened then with Alton is we did a stint on Broadway. So we only did a week. It was a holiday over November, Thanksgiving, so it tied in with the whole cooking theme. But it was on Broadway. It's in the theaters that all the Broadway do. So I can say I've been on Broadway. I have a playbill. I forgot to bring it, but I have a playbill with my name on it. Something that's interesting about that that I like to tell people is, so my junior year in college, as a lighting design major, right? That's what I wanted to do. That was what I wanted my life to be. My lighting professor, of all people, the one that's supposed to encourage you and be there for everything, said, "You will never make it. Stop now. You won't make it on Broadway. You won't make it. Just stop." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool."
Show them the playbill.
So, and as a theater person, that's like soul crushing of like, what do you mean I'll never make it? That's what I want to do. So in the back of my mind, that picture, I do have a picture of me with the playbill giving him a certain hand gesture that I wanted to mail him, but I didn't. I stayed good. But it just comes to show that even if someone tells you, hey, you'll never make it, you will eventually. You will get there if you keep pushing. I learned, though, that I don't want to go back on Broadway, interestingly enough. It's a whole different animal, and it was not a fun one. I mean, it was fun, but it's a whole nother story. If you want to hear about it, let me know. It's another 20 minutes that we don't have time for. So after 6 years being on the road, traveling, I was ready to settle down a little bit. So I got off the road and started doing sales and production for TMS, selling shows. Clients would come to me, say, hey, we're doing an event, we need lighting, we need sound, and I would price all that out, build it out, plan their event with them. And a lot of the customers I worked with were the ones that had no idea what they were doing. They were just like, hey, we're gonna put on a conference and we're gonna have a speaker that has a PowerPoint and we need some lights and that's all I know. Okay, great. So I help facilitate all of that, bringing in the lighting, bringing in the video, bringing in the sound, making sure they're able to make that event truly happen. And those are my favorite types of customers. The ones that call me and are like, I need this, 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 and this. I'm just like, okay, here you go, right? Because they know what they're doing. They just want a number and they'll take care of it. I'd rather work with people that have no idea what they're doing and mold them and help them find their vision of what they want. So while also in the company, I moved throughout the company and I also rebranded them, restructured them using the Traction EOS system, if anyone's ever heard of that. If you haven't, if you're a business that's 3 to 200 people, read that book, Traction EOS by Gino Wickman. It's an amazing book. So for a 30-year-old company to not even have an organizational structure that has 60 employees and is worth $10 million was kind of crazy. So it was a big step for that owner to take that leap and kind of trust a 30-something to restructure his company for him, essentially. They still use it today. That's great. They still use all the new branding. It's nice to see a new logo after 30 years. So that's like my stamp on that company is I'll see that logo for the next 30 years because he won't change it again. I know that. That was a fight. So during that time at TMS, so I met my future husband. I then moved here to Lincoln to live with him more, so was commuting back and forth. And I was actually working as just a stagehand, one of those extra people, at a show at CHI Health Center for Peter Kiewit. Peter Kiewit, huge company, tons of money. They were doing their big annual event. So they used the whole ballroom, every space at CHI. I mean, their budget, I'm sure, was $500,000, right? They weren't messing around. And I saw this lady walking around with this piece of paper in her hand, and the paper was a 3D rendering of what her space should look like. So someone went in and designed it. So she kind of knew what she should be seeing in real life. And she's like, yeah, that looks like it. And I was like, okay, you have no idea if it's really what you're paying for or what you're wanting or what you need. And I asked her, I said, hey, what's your job? And she said, I do communications. And I was like, so do you do this all the time? She goes, nope. I plan this one event, I take the month, I plan it, and then I go back to my job of doing communications. I was like, oh, okay, so you guys don't have anyone internal that all you do is events all year? Nope, it's my side hustle. And I was like, interesting. And then the production company they hired, which was not TMS, they left all of their pricing on the table. And as someone that's interested in it, I was like, ooh, yes, here we go. So I started looking through it, and the pricing that they were paying was just through the roof of day rates, equipment costs, and it was simply because this company knew Peter Kiewit has money, and the lady had no idea what she was doing. So they took advantage of it. And so in my head, I was like, there has to be a way that I can be that person before that happens and stop all of this, these companies from taking advantage and overselling a product that's not needed. So that's when I really decided to kind of take that leap and start Thrive. And with that, I decided to leave TMS. It was time. I left everything good there. I still work with them to this day, and everything is good. So it's super important. Don't ever burn that bridge, for sure. It's amazingly important. While I was kind of building out Thrive in the beginning, I did a little stint with these four lovely people here with Signature. They sell championship rings. So that was an interesting little side thing that I was doing, learning a whole different avenue of sales and marketing. And that was a super interesting experience, and I'm glad I met all those amazing people. But then Thrive kind of built up a little more, and it was time to really focus on that. So at Thrive, I concentrate, it is just me. I talk a lot about we, because I don't know, I like to make it seem like it's this big thing, but it really is just me. I won't lie about that. So I work with customers that are really like tired spending time, money, and on the same event year after year and not really having anything fresh or new, or it just seems tired. I work with clients that seem frustrated that they're having the same look, and their customers are honestly just kind of like, yep, here's the same thing again. And it's their side hustle. If the person is like, yeah, I like that Peter Kiewit, that they only plan it once a year, that is like my go-to sweet spot that I want to work with that company. Because I feel like the labor they're spending in this person trying to plan this event that has no idea what they're doing, and then they drop all of their other work. And how much money is that costing? You don't see that money of that work dropped, but it really is happening. There was an insurance guy here that I met, actually. He mentioned that. He goes, yeah, the lady who plans our events for the whole month, she's our full paper pusher in their company. She goes, for the month before our event, our company just halts and stops almost because this lady's trying to call catering companies and production companies and just really not concentrating on her work. So those are really a lot of my sweet spots that I want to work with companies. And with that, I like to concentrate on bringing in production elements, so lighting, sound, video, to really help that branding out and build out a space. So you're not just using the same conference room, the same ballroom, the same space. You're really thinking outside the box and bringing a fresh feel. Even if you have to do it at that ballroom, how can we change that ballroom so that the audience who's been in the Cornhusker ballroom for 45 events, their event looks different? Or thinking about spaces that you wouldn't normally think about. I've done an event at Crossroads Mall in Omaha, and if you know Crossroads Mall in Omaha, there's nothing in there. It's like we shut down an entire hallway and did an event in there. And who would think to do an event in a mall? There was one store we had to shut down, and they were fine with it. We probably paid them more than they made in their normal day for them to close one day. So it's thinking of that kind of stuff, finding those warehouses, and if you're a big industry guy and you have a warehouse, like, you don't need to go rent the ballroom. Use that money to, instead of renting a ballroom, to transform your space internally or externally. So instead of spending $1 million on a ballroom, make your room look like $1 million and spend less. Bring in some production. So with that, I also like to really concentrate on branding and how that integrates into your event. I mean, small things of details in invitations, details in, let's say you have a cake, how you're going to do it. A couple of these people, actually, Paige was at my wedding. If she wanted, I could bring her up here and she could talk about branding and how I branded my wedding. And it was amazing. There was so many things that like no one would have thought about, but it's little details that I hope my clients, I want when their audience comes, I want them to sit at the table and go, do you see that? That's super cool. I wonder if that was on purpose, right? It's kind of that Disney mentality, how they put Mickey Mouse and everything, but yet you kind of notice it, but you don't. It's those little things that I think take an event from a 7 to a 10 and really amp it up. I also use a lot of industry connections to make sure people aren't oversold on product and pricing. Everyone knows this word LED screen right now. That's a big thing, but you don't have to have LED screens. Projectors still work and are not going away. It's those types of things. Someone sold you on an LED screen versus a projector, you could spend $10,000 more when you had no reason to. But they're gonna say, that's the way you gotta do it. You gotta have it. It's the new thing, right? It's not necessary in a lot of applications. So in closing, I kind of just, my go-to that I wanted to sort of, one of the questions to present here was like, what do you want your audience to take away? My big thing is be nice, be persistent, and always chase what you want. I think being nice can do that for you. So with that, I guess if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Yeah?
Justin, I've worked in a company like you described, that we were big enough, we had an annual event, and when it was time for that annual event, there was usually 1 or 2 people that were drawn away from their regular job to put that event together. And you said that's your sweet spot. How do you convince those companies that it's worth their while to hire an outside professional?
It's very hard. And that's something I even am challenged with today, of trying to get them to understand that concept. So I try to show them things of how we can save some money on creating new ideas and maybe thinking outside that box and asking, how much time are you spending per week? Like, let's say you order catering. How many caterers are you calling? You're calling 4, and you're spending 20 minutes with each person, so you're spending an hour a day, which is whatever your day rate is, or hour rate, versus if you just let me do it, I could probably talk to a caterer in 5 minutes and have it done in a price, just because of the language, the understanding, the back and forth. So I think trying to just show that of like, let me call the 45 people, and then you only call 1. And everything that you need, you send it to me, and I'm the one that takes all that off of you. So, yeah, Julie.
Who do you actually want to be talking to?
So
What person, what title?
A title, a lot of it is I've been finding communications department, marketing teams are true. I mean, obviously I would take CEOs and presidents, but most of the time they're not the ones making those decisions. So yeah, communications, marketing, advertising, those types of people. Yeah.
What's a typical budget for an event that you plan? Do you find that people, and second part is, do you find people have a little bit of sticker shock when they realize how much it costs to do a really nice event?
So budget is always the hardest conversation to have. And most people, they want to start their event by saying, well, let's get pricing and then we'll plan the budget. And I always say, no. Plan your budget, then let's work in that budget and make those dollars stretch. Because yeah, people are gonna get sticker shock. I was just working with Olson and Associates, and I neglected on talking budget with her. And so I went for the moon. And she's like, this is so far out of what we were thinking. And I was like, okay, well, what are you thinking? And now she's given me her number, and now we're producing an event, and I'm stretching those dollars as far as I possibly can to get her everything. So we would run that into a lot, even at TMS. People would call and just, well, can we get a quote? Well, sure, but are you wanting eggs or are you wanting caviar? Where do you want to be? So I think that's a big thing that you have to ask yourself before you do an event. Really an event, I mean, Olson Associates, we're gonna only spend $1,200, right? Now, they're probably spending more with me. They're gonna spend money on catering and that. This is a lot of the production, the decor, that side. But it just shows that even a couple hundred or $1,200, and we're gonna change that whole room. We're gonna make it green, and we're gonna give all these other little elements that they wouldn't have normally had if they wouldn't have just kind of thought of how do we decorate a little more and how do we bring in production to things.
Does the company that you worked with previously, did they just say your event's going to be $20,000 and they would pay the caterer and they would pay the florist and they would pay the
So the company I used to work for, TMS, we did a lot of production. We would only concentrate on lighting, sound, video, and staging. They would not do the other side of the catering, the florist.
You ever want to get to the point where you're just like, this is the budget for everything and I'll just take care of all of it?
So that is what I want to do right now. Okay. Yep, I want to be the general contractor, essentially, for your event. So you come to me, everything would be billed out of me. I take care of all the back end. So you're paying one bill, essentially, and that'd be to me. And then I deal with all of the other side. So one-stop shop, sort of. Yeah.
Did you get Kiwi?
I'm trying. So before I started that, I didn't think about Thrive yet at that moment in time. So I didn't get the lady's name. I can picture her, and I gave her my contact information because I was actually thinking about looking for other work or like to do what she did, but for a company.
So your contact is TMS.
So I'm still hunting them down. Of course, you call Kiwit and you talk to their marketing department and they give you a voicemail that says, we are not interested, and it hangs up on you, essentially.
So if you know anyone.
So anyone knows Kiwit, let me know. Yes.
EOS, or traction and EOS,
Uh-huh.
Are you applying that in what you're doing?
A little bit here and there. I feel as one person, sometimes it's a little harder to implement, the structure stops at, a single line.
Still got to deal with the big rocks.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely working. Yeah, I've got my own rocks to try to hit and do all those things, so for sure. Yeah. Yes?
So you moved into the wedding world because there are people willing to pay large amounts of money
Mhm.
for something they produce.
Yep. So the wedding world is an interesting one. Yeah. So my goal is to stay in a corporate side. I like that aspect of it. But speaking of weddings, I guess I'll just throw it out there now. I don't care. It's coming. I'm actually launching a little side brand of Thrive, and it'll just be called Thrive Events, LGBTQ plus weddings. That I will focus on a niche market of only LGBTQ plus events. I feel like it's a underutilized market, and they're not, there's still people out there that are not happy to work with that community. And so if I can help people as an ally, I'm a member of the community, then to me that's a bonus. It's not about money for that one. It's truly about helping, because when I planned my wedding, there was definitely phone calls to people, and you could hear the change in tone when they found out, and it was like, and now I won't work with you. Have a great one. So, yeah. So weddings are something I'm going to start kind of dipping my toe into, but I want to stay on the corporate side, really.
Other questions?
Not a question, well, kind of. Are you familiar with Nebraska?
Of course.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
I just want to make sure, because that would be a.
Yep, we're all,
advertising
yes.
stream. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
How many clients do you actually want to be serving, like, say for this Christmas season, holiday season?
Yeah, so my target right now is I want to do 4 to 6 events a month is where I want to settle in on, would be my goal. So.
And how long does it usually take? Like, say somebody wants to do it in November. Is there enough time?
Oh, of course.
Depending, yeah.
Of course. You could put an event together in 2 weeks if you had to. But there's
You
that.
could, I could.
You?
Right.
Yeah.
I could. Right.
Clarify.
But yes, thank you. Yes, messaging. Yes, stay.
That's why he's here.
Yes. But here's the thing that I tell a lot of clients is, if you've ever seen the fast, cheap, and good model, you've got 3 words, you can only pick 2 of them. So you're either going to have fast and good, but it won't be cheap. Or you're going to have fast and cheap, but it won't be good.
All right.
So anything is possible. It's just, I feel that's a great model that I like to tell people. It's like, you can get it done fast, but you're going to pay for it. I mean, think about game day on Saturday. ESPN Game Day.
Yeah.
Production companies found out about that on Tuesday, and they will be there on Friday to load it. So it's totally possible, but guess what? They're paying for it. And the production companies know ESPN will pay for it. So, yeah.
When you do an event, you supply like stages, lighting, all that type of stuff. Wouldn't
Yep.
you have a tremendous amount of inventory, or?
So I am working on the side of I bring in all the contractors.
Oh.
So I'm not holding inventory. I'm not
Okay.
holding gear. I'm
Okay.
simply acting as the planner, choreographer, and using all the contractors outside. So my
you know
big
where to get a stage and get
Right.
lighting and trusses and all that.
correct.
Okay.
Yep. And my theory is on a production side, there are companies that do lighting, there are companies that do sound, and there are companies that do video, and there are companies that do staging. 4 different companies. And then there's a company that does everything. And I personally will always bring in all 4 companies, then go to the one. Because you're going to get way better people that are specialized in all of those, and they're going to actually probably come in cheaper, as weird as it seems, than the one company. And this one company over here is going to be stretched. So if you really want them to do lighting, sound, video, staging, they're going to try to be like, well, we'll send 3 people to do that. Versus these 4 companies are going to send 2, 2, 2, and 1. So you now have 2, 4, 6, 7 people loading in your event versus 3. And a lot of people think that everyone loves this like one-stop shop thought, right? But it really sometimes doesn't work. So
That's really good. Really good.
yeah, especially on the event side, everyone's buying everything of everything, right? But it's like, but if you just narrow it down into what these people, if you think about technology, it always needs cleaned and fixed. If a company has all of this stuff over here and they only know how to work 60% of it, well, 40% of it's just going to sit dirty and get gross, versus this company, they know everything about all of their inventory and they take care of it and clean it. It's just a different animal. So I'd rather bring 20 people to the table than to just bring a few. So, yeah.
Got time for one more question.
Back to your Hewitt thing, have you tried going through St. E's and finding out who their contact was in dealing with that? Yeah, but the CHF, they had to have somebody working on that, and they had to have contact information from Hewitt. Have you tried
Yep.
going through that door?
I have not, and that is a very good, I know all the people at CHI, so that would be a
There you go.
valid, yes, perfect.
Write that down.
Yeah, right? Yes.
Mission time.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, right?
A free donut.
Yeah.
There we go.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Justin, thank you so much for being here and for that terrific information. As a thank you, we'd like to present you with a Focus Suite mug.
Awesome.
So thank you for being here today.
Appreciate it.
Please don't feel like you have to run off, hang around in the space as long as you want. Come up and ask Justin more questions. Get his business card for your next event. Meet somebody new before you leave, and hopefully you'll come back next week. If you're not getting our newsletter and want to, make sure you give me your business card before you go. Thank you for being here.